Hello everybody, today we're going to be taking a look at the Chiltern main line between London Marylebone and Birmingham Snow Hill. We start off at London Marylebone, which, as I've mentioned before, is one of the few London terminus stations where we're able to put all the platforms above ground on the Simutrans map. So other big stations like Paddington, which you can see on the screen as well, we simply can't fit them for space reasons, so we've had to put some of the platforms underground. But since Marylebone's only got 6 platforms, that's not so much of a problem, and we're able to fit them all in here. Now we're going to be leaving Marylebone on a slow stopping train to High Wycombe, and at that point we'll be getting on the train to Birmingham Snow Hill. This train travels underground again for space reasons until Neasden, simply because the West Hampstead type area is a pretty crowded area with train lines and we can't fit another 2 tracks in here. Since my last video I've mostly been working on some cosmetic additions to this map. One of them you will have seen quite centrally in the last video was the motorways. So I noticed that there were lots of places on the map where there should be motorways and they would make a nice visual addition to the map, but there weren't any there. So I've been around and added the M25 and a few of the other motorways around London, and some of you will have seen the last video, which was a journey around the M25, allowing us to see all the train lines that crosses. And making the motorway graphics, I borrowed some graphics from Pack 128, shrunk them down so to get a different look from the roads that are already on the map. Similarly, I have altered the graphics on the rails to make it so that double tracks no longer have gaps. This is something that people have done before in Simutrans, but I think it really adds to the visual element of the map, to the rails. Another thing is I've upgraded the intercity roads, the non-motorway ones. You can probably notice that they're a bit different and a little less ugly. And the other thing, which you'll probably notice quite a lot in this video, is that I've added some farms. So one thing about some of these videos and about having such a large map as this is that you have a lot of empty blank space between the cities, which is really quite boring, and that especially becomes noticeable on a video like this, where eventually once we get past about Bicester there's a couple of long gaps between stations and there wouldn't be much to see otherwise. Whereas of course if you look at a satellite picture or anything, you've just got stacks and stacks of farmland and it's very difficult to automatically simulate that in Simutrans. So I decided to add some farm graphics. I've adapted some graphics that Sarlock posted on the official forums a few months ago, as well as creating some of my own, just to add a bit of graphical flavour to these maps, and to give something extra to look at. So they're all coded as city buildings, which means that each farm graphic is placed individually, each square, and that means that it's a lot of kind of manual labour, as it were, to get all the farms on the map. For that reason I don't think I'm going to be adding them absolutely everywhere. I'll just be adding them for the purposes of making areas look a bit prettier for the sake of videos and screenshots and so on and so forth. But I think the motorways coupled with the new rails coupled with the farms really adds a lot of visual colour to the map. So as for the Chiltern main line itself, this part of the world was relatively straightforward to timetable and so forth. There's only a little bit of irregularity with one path that seems to vary on the timetable between terminating at Banbury, Bicester, and then very occasionally goes up to Stratford. In order to give Stratford upon Avon its direct service to Marylebone, I've made that train alternate between terminating at Banbury 1 hour and terminating at Stratford the other. Now that I think gives Stratford upon Avon more services to London than it would otherwise have, but it allows me to keep the scheduling relatively simple without having to run a kind of 3-hour cycle. The other thing that I haven't done, at least yet, is to implement any loco-hauled services along the Chiltern main line. A few of the services from Marylebone to Birmingham are hauled by locomotives rather than these multiple units, and I haven't yet got that done. I'll experiment with that at some point just to see if it doesn't mess with the regularity too much. So we're approaching the edge of Birmingham now, as it were, and this is one of the other challenges with the route, because once we get to Dorridge we start to interact with some of the London Midland slow stopping services through the Snow Hill lines as well. And in fact you'll notice that when we get just past Dorridge we have to run slowly for a little bit because we're a few minutes ahead of time, and so we run up against the slow service. But it's working quite well because we don't lose very much time at all. We just have to pause a little bit after Solihull. So the very centre of Birmingham, as you'll see in a minute, is one of the few areas on this map outside London where things are crowded enough to need a little bit of manipulation. So you'll notice we've only got about 6 platforms of Birmingham New Street above ground. I won't talk too much about Birmingham New Street today because we're covering that in the next video, but the rest of Birmingham New Street is underground, and we'll get to see that a little more in what I think will be the next video, which will be the West Coast Main Line from London to Birmingham. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.